that's great. So I start the session. First of all, thanks very much for the invite, and I would like to thanks the Jam Hojam and others for arranging this session. My Turkish is not good. I could speak Turkish, but I will continue. So I'm Azeri. I could speak Turkish, but because I always present everything in English, it's gonna be hard for me.
We have international participants, so you can.
We have international participants as well.
Yeah, you can continue in English, no problem.
Yes. Okay. So this is a session we Levent and I been working on it for a while, and we have this session in Levent Altunay's journal, Professor Levent Altunay's journal from Oxford Brookes University. I will start the presentation, a little bit of a background of the journal, and also I will give you some tips on how to publish papers. So that's my objective of today's presentation. So first of all is all we use here from my own research as an associate editor of a journal, member of editorial board, and as an author and co-author and guest editor of different journals. So my research is about in marketing and consumer behavior, but also I do quite a lot of hospitality and tourism. I'm associate editor for the Service Industries Journal, but also International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management. So as associate editor, I of both journals, I have some insight on how to publish different papers. So Service Industries Journal is focused on service sector from the name of the service and service firm and effective management in the firm. So everything is to do with the service and how you could apply different research from sociology, psychology, from mainstream management. Everything needs to be informed by the social sciences, but basis on the sociology, psychology, and economy, law, and politics. The impact factor of the journal is 9.4, is a Q1 impact factor journal, and also the site score is 10.8. So the important function of research in general is about rigorous research, advanced academic understanding, but also needs to have some sort of implication for the policy making and teaching practices. Publication motivation can be different, depends on the people. It's personal for some people is CV development, for others is a new contribution to knowledge. And also is good to apply your writing skills when you want to write papers. Some example of global issues which the journal is interested is refugee crisis, climate change, smart services, digital, informal economy, sharing economy, also global pieces. These are the bets the journal is quite interested in. Methodology-wise is interdisciplinary in social science, informed by the social science, but also, as I mentioned, has a lot to do with the economy, social, and environmental impact. And also I would like to highlight is a lot to do with the international scope. It could be, so we are not only interested on British and American papers, we are open to any papers from all around the world with different views. So methodology-wise is theory building exercises, more qualitative, also mixed method, experiment, labs, big data, etc., etc., and also developing research and instrument in particular cultures such as in Chinese. This is a word from Levent Altena. It's not my word, but it's a published research and developmental theory, but it's the same again about informal social sciences. So I've not covered these parts before. A couple of years ago, after Levent took the editorship of the journal, there were some changes. Then now is the regional editor. There's a methodological editor, also the Chinese language editor, because it wants to cover all this, particularly Mandarin Chinese. So abstracts are in both in English and the Chinese language as well. Coming to a little bit of background of journal, now coming to the cutting-edge doctoral research stream, this is to do with the doctoral student, those who have recently awarded their doctorate within the 2 years of the completion. So they can write the paper based on their PhD, basically, either could be solo author or could be with their supervisors. But we are interested is it needs to be conceptual or methodological. So one of these two. By conceptual papers, we mean without the data. So people can write different aspects of the services industry. So, for example, in my area, in a marketing and management, stuff on the new contemporary topics like sharing economy, smart cities, and a lot to do metaverse now, VR, AR, all these things, and bringing sort of different aspect of these as a conceptual paper. And also we are interested in systematic literature review as well. But should offer a clearly argue, justify, integrated framework in the paper. Methodological paper, current and new methods. So not just the typical survey data, we are interested in big data analysis. We are interested on anything new or has been a less attention being given last couple of years in a service industry and management and business studies. So for example, as I mentioned, it's a big data analysis, but also multiple qualitative analysis, for example. There are little papers written on multiple qualitative papers. Mainly comes mixed method, which is qual and quant mixed, but less on multiple qualitative ones. So we're talking about 5,000 words papers, including references. So with short papers we're looking at. So you need to, whenever you're submitting as a PhD student or as somebody just finished a PhD, you need to have a cover letter telling us exactly these 3 points. The stage of first author has reached in their doctoral studies, whether the conceptual or methodological paper is submitted, why the paper should be considered for the cutting-edge research. So these are the main things we are interested in. So I'm gonna give some academic journal writing tips in the next slides. Is there any questions so far? Question, comment?
Any questions from our participants, specifically about the cutting-edge research stream and the definition of the conceptual and methodological papers?
Don't need to have a question. I just want to ask if there are any questions. So I'll give you some tips on academic journal writings. And as I said, these are my own views, and my friends and they might have different views. My colleagues might have different views. So initial research idea. So good research starts with a good research topic, and it needs to be a new and novel. And in the paper about a particular timely topic in your area. So it could be something to do, again, I'm going back to marketing area, to do with the VR and AR, which is more now a hot topic. But don't try cram your PhD, all your data and ideas into the 9,000 words. So some people, they try to do that, and is a big failure because you cannot explore everything in a 9,000 words. You cannot put 100,000 words PhD in a 9,000 words paper. Where to submit? You need to be a loyal reader for the journals you want to submit. So you need, if you want to submit to Service Industries Journal, you need to be a loyal reader. But also you need to pick a right journal to be helpful for you. So different countries, they have different lists of the journals. In Britain, they follow, which I was there for 20 years, they still follow ABS list, but Australian, they follow ABDC, and in state, they like to Q style sort of list. So it depends which area you're from and which country you are. But all in all these lists saying something unique in common, and good journals, we know which are there. So in marketing, we know Journal of Marketing is the best one. We know Journal of Consumer Research is the best one. If you want to do in hospitality, tourism management is the top journal. Tourism research is top journal. Journal of Travel Research is top journal. So we know those journals, but universities normally follow particular publication lists. Structuring of the main paper, some people is a big failure, I think. So don't try write and edit in the same time. So if you try write and edit the same time, you will lose it. It's better to have some structure in the start. So this is the main body. In the introduction, I'm going to talk about this. In method, I'm going to talk about this. In findings, I'm going to talk about this. And then you put them under heading and subheading and try to talk about your research. And you need to.
I think there's a question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, on the chat. I have a question about the Service Industries Journal. Is Science Citation Index, I don't know, it's in Social Science Citation Index, isn't it?
Yes, I see. I put it in one of the slides in the beginning. I go back again. So I can't remember in my top of my head. So you cite score, somebody asked, is it cite score you're asking?
No, I think
is it covered by the Social Science Citation Index?
Yes, it is covered.
It is covered, and it has a relatively high impact factor.
Yes, exactly.
The individual is asking whether it's indexed in Science Citation, not Social Science Citation.
I don't know that question.
Science Citation Index.
I know in social science. I don't know about science.
Okay, all right.
So I don't know. I could, if you could email me, I can figure out later on if there is. But this is a social science journal, basically. So I'm not sure. So yes, we're talking. Describe the problem. So you need to describe the problem. Are there any existing solution? What are the main limitations? What do you hope to achieve from your paper? So all about these. And don't try to turn a section into a history lesson. So don't try to lose interest of people when you're trying to publish in the journals. Foreign guideline for the authors, this is very important. So if you want to publish in the Service Industries Journal, it's good to read the guideline for author. So it needs to be APA style, referencing style, for example. It is a loose abstract structure. It's not a structured abstract. So all these are important, and how many words it needs to be there. So these are important. It doesn't matter about the Service Industries Journal, any journal you want to submit. Literature review and the background, so that's very important. So when it comes to the background, you just don't need to keep defining what is happening in the world. You need to go right to the point. Discussion are key issues and relevant to the paper. So it starts normally with something in fact from BBC, CNN, or something, or Hurriyet newspaper or something, and then you go along with that. So defining concept, if it's a qualitative paper, you want to define the concept. And if it's a quantitative paper, you want to develop the hypothesis. And also the visual demonstration conceptual frameworks are good. I'm very big fan of visual demonstrations. Like if you have a conceptual model, you need to draw the relationship between the different hypotheses. And also there are a lot of specific literature review papers, like systematic literature review, meta-analysis, co-citation approach. All these things also are important. So for example, we did a paper with Levant on sharing economy. So it was a review paper. And in that paper, we looked at, we summarized the sharing economy in hospitality. And also we had a summary of the table. So the journal, the editor of the journal was interested, in this case, International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management. Again, we did a systematic literature review, word of mouth in the hotel industry. So we follow the structure of what is the service, the systematic SLR papers needs to be. So again, this is important. These kind of papers are is now a hot topic, and a lot of them are now published because, particularly now, we are in verge of changes, I would say, in social science and digital, VR, all these things, human interactions with the machines, and this is happening, and you will see more of these papers published in different journals. Methodology-wise, it could be qualitative, quantitative, mixed method, and multi-method. So it depends which view and which paper, which study you want to do before going. And there is no wrong or right which methodology you want to use. For quantitative research, what is the new in the area? Present the state of knowledge, so why people should bother to read your paper. So you define the concept, define the constructs in your paper, what are the dependent and independent variables, research question, hypothesis, proposition, if they are there, needs to be there. But what is important, and I mentioned that before in a couple of slides before, critical literature review of the concepts and construct. So that's very important, not just listing a previous study, but critically evaluating that. Talk about your data, how do you collect the data, which are the measures, are there any reliability, validity tests, sample size, your population, etc. How did you analyze the data, which software you use, if it's a structural model, did you use PLS, AMOS, M+, which software you use and why you used it. And also remember, there's a limitation with any study you do. For quantitative research, these are the hot topic at the moment. So big data, Bayesian network analysis, qualitative comparative analysis, fuzzy data are quite now, and also still we have lots of structural model papers and experiments. Again, we going back to the experimental studies quite a lot. Because, as I said, because of the human and machine interactions. So we did like papers like this, typical structural model papers are popular. So we did the paper on this. We looked at the customer participation, and if you go into the hotel, your mood is going to influence your participation with the hotels, and based on that, you get different values. Or you want to compare two different sets of data, two different cities, and again, we did a paper. So these kind of papers are getting taking momentum at the moment. Sorry, I'm rushing some of the slides, but I'm more than happy to explain if anybody has any questions. For qualitative, it needs to be social processes, so it's very qualitative. It needs to be subjective matter and subjectively looking at the data. So again, it's important to see how you collect your data, who collected data, and explain the participants. Again, if you use computer for analyzing your data, did you use thematic analysis, ground theory, which method you use? Also, reliability and validity, even qualitative data needs to be as a very particular and specific reliability and validity measures, like member checking, etc. So those are important. And again, there are limitations of these studies. Hot topics in the qualitative research: historical data analysis, ethnography, using fancy software like Leximancer, Focus Vision, conflict group, bifocal groups. All these are quite popular. Screencast videography, or videography itself, they are quite taking popularity at the moment. So for example, we did a paper, we looked at the volunteer tourism in published Annals of Tourism Research. What I liked about, and this is like a particular view I have, when I do pure qualitative study, I always try to summarize the concept I'm focusing in a table. So in this case was about volunteer tourism, so I summarize in the table there. Also, I would like to develop a conceptual model based on the analysis of the qualitative data. Here was several cases and interviews. Again, journals are interested to see these. Or another one is in published annals in CSR. For the people they do sustainability and CSR, they know this model of Moon's model is different pillars of the CSR. So we apply this management one for first time in heritage studies, and we want to see which pillars of the management studies can be worked for within the heritage side. And you see in the table in the bottom, some pillars are working, some pillars are not working. So again, this is quite interesting way of looking at the qualitative data. Mixed method and multi-method is another approach. Multi-method, when you do several qualitative or several quantitative, or in the mixed method, you mix qualitative and quantitative together. And it's the best, instead of using one method, you're using two methods for this capturing the same phenomena. I'm very much in this, and I published quite a lot of papers on multi-method and mixed method approaches. I enjoy doing that myself. So, and it's quite good, but there are some limitations for doing that. So several difficulties. Multi-source data is costly. You need to have multiple teams of the people to helping you. So some people are subjective, some people are objective, some people are qualitative, quantitative. Generating different answers for the same phenomena is not easy when you have qualitative and quantitative. And because you mix in both methods, reliability and validity becomes a problem. So think twice when you do this. Again, this slide is the same one is repeating. So it's just accepted. It's gonna be online. I did a paper with Fevzi Okumuş, editor of International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management, with Professor Okumuş. I'm associate editor, that we developed these. So as a conducting mixed method research, how you conduct a mixed method approaches, and I come up with this model so people can use it when they want to publish a mixed method papers. Again, that's another way of looking at the method. There are several examples. This is like we use a fuzzy data analysis. We publish a festival. This one actually is from Turkey, is in Cappadocia festival in Cappadocia. And we use a fuzzy data analysis, but at the same time we did the interviews. So it was a mixed method to confirming what was what quantitative data was telling us. Again, we publish in Journal of Business Research, and we look at the interaction, online fan pages, and again we look at the qualitative angle, so the interviews and surveys together. Or sometimes you could have two different sets of paper, not connected from the same source. So for example, with this one, we look at the medical tourism. We did a survey with the with the medical tourists, with consumers. Also, we did interviews with the service providers, in this case, with the hospital employees. And we use agile methodology. For those people, they don't know, it's a qualitative way of quantifying concept, basically. So we had lots of themes, and based on that, we make a first order, second order, and aggregated theoretical dimensions. And each of the, like a first order one, A and B in the top of the page, basically those are the themes comes out of the interviews. And you say these two, A and B together, means cultural practice. And all the second order comes next. And at the end, you have an aggregating one when you put all these things together. Again, this is another way of looking at the data. Or scale development papers. Again, these are the interesting way of looking at the data analysis. My PhD was on scale development 100 years ago, and is the same. It is a quite interesting way of mixing qualitative and quantitative, and it still is popular in social science. So just a couple of more slides, and I want to wrap it up. So when it comes to the result, is write the result first. So you do reverse engineering. You do the qualitative or quantitative, whatever you do, you have the results, and based on that, you develop your conceptual model, because your result might be different later on. You just twist your conceptual model. Don't ignore the negative findings. So some people are scared when they run, particularly with the quantitative. They're supposed to have a positive relationship, but then suddenly get negative. That's, I think, is interesting, and I think that gives another angle, the same discussion, ongoing discussion as well. And discussion parts is normally there is a research question. I always repeat the research question when it comes to discussion part. So remind my reader who's going to read the paper. What did you find? Implication, both practical, theoretical, further research, limitation, typical papers to write. You need to, here you get the chance to sell your data, basically, the idea to the others. So I love this sentence, and nobody has ever said, I wish this paper was longer. So that's why you need to be careful when you're writing and editing your paper. It needs to be concise, and it needs to be neat. And also using British or American English, check for grammar, typos, etc. Read the paper in the journal before submitting. That's very, very important. So editors and associate editors like to see you cite a couple of papers of the journal you submitted to. So that's very important. Abstract, normally 150 words. It could be 100, but normally maximum you get on average 150 words. What you include: purpose, method, finding, conclusion. What you don't include: discussion, evaluation, interpretation, speculation. So these are the bits you don't normally. And write abstract last thing. Some people, they do first, but I cannot do it because I know it's going to change. So last thing I do is writing abstract. Title, normally 50 words or less. And this is important. So don't write a boring titles. Consider something through the provoking. These kind of fancy words you find from dictionaries, you don't write those. Try to make it very simple for the people. Also, think about others may read and cite your paper. So as a paper about consumer engagement, you try to put the word engagement in the title of your paper. So whoever later on cites it will gonna cite your paper, and it comes up in the Google Scholar as well. In the introduction, what known about the problem and what not known about the problem. So that's the way you basically conceptualize your research question. An editor hates reference irrelevant to the work. This is very important. So don't try dump any references comes to your mind, because some associate editor and editor might read and say, but this is not relevant. You just try to say, I know you just cited a couple of papers without reading it. So that's very important to know. Last thing, must hear from all co-authors and get permission before submitting, and ask friendly reviewers. So what is important when I'm saying ask friendly reviewers? First of all, it's important to have friends, so you could ask them to review your paper. So and it's good to have a view before submitting to the journal, particularly for those people that submitted in that particular journal you're targeting for. Dealing with the revision, I always come up with a table of reply. Stick to the fact, don't rant, don't waffle, don't respond to the reviewer feedback as soon as you get, because you get emotional, you get angry. So, and also try to be very, very polite. And copy the changes in the table of reply. I normally do copy changes in table of reply, but some people, they write the page numbers. I find that confusing, so I always copy the changes. Revision normally has these clarifications, 7. I would say 99% is going to be one of these questions. Your research question is not clear. Exploring text and additional text to fill a gap in your paper. Straying in methodological section, request additional analysis, exploration of your discussion section, theoretical implications and practical implications not clear, or improve it, improving your limitations. So it's going to be one of these 7 they will ask you, or a couple of them combined together. So we did a paper on, I did a paper on measuring, it was a scale development paper on host sincerity. And normally that's the example I do. So the first column, the question from the reviewers, and the second one, how I'd say. I always be polite with the reviewers. First of all, thank you very much for support for the paper. We hope we had intended to comment to your comment fully below. So very polite. And then say we have rewritten the introduction section in order to accommodate your valuable comments. So very polite with them. The reviewers, remember, they're human, and some of them, they have a big ego as well. So you need to deal with their ego as well here. Remember, when you publish a paper, you only see the final product, basically. So it will be several revision. If you get the first revision is good, but it's not finished, so still you need to do more work. If rejected, unless the study was fatally flawed, bury it fast and move on, and try to find other journals when you get a rejection. We all get rejections, and it's not specific for the people, particular people. Common mistake includes in when you write papers, and so this is the last slide basically. Limited or no contribution. So you see that that's one when the reviewers hated your paper basically. Very dated citation. So you're talking about VR and you're citing papers from 1960s. No critical engagement with the literature. That's very, you get that question quite a lot. Too context specific. So it's something to do, only can happen in Turkey, cannot be applied to state, for example. Poor exploration with many grammatical errors. Ask somebody, native speaker, if you're not a native speaker, to read your paper. Even native speakers, they ask somebody else to read their paper. And extensive plagiarism. So don't copy paste. And new journals, you know, they have the software. They will pick up on this. And also remember, don't use ChatGPT as well. All these things, new software, they will flag out on that as well. Okay, thanks very much for listening. Sorry, I rushed some of the slides. Just want to give you some glance of the research, and if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Thank you. Kinda.
Hocam, may I ask one question, please?
Sure. Kinda?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. It was really very enrichment presentation. I have a question regarding the what you said earlier about critical literature review. Now, I'm a PhD student, and I'm struggling currently to build my literature review and fill the gap in the literature and try to justify my contribution. So, what is the tips and tricks from your side that you can give us on how to improve our critical literature review? I mean, to provide a very strong literature review that is contributing to the literature and filling the gap.
Okay, there's no particular recipe for this, if you're asking, but my personal experience from since I did my PhD and publishing papers is you need to first in PhD level, it's good to put in a table. So you start papers. Let's say if it's something to do with the VR, you're looking at the papers in the last 20 years and put them in a paper, the main papers you have. That gives you an idea of what these guys are talking, and then you can try find the common themes and common sort of argument. So that's one way of looking at it. Read more, write more. That was the advice I got from my PhD supervisor. If you read more, you will see how other people call papers. Write more. So you write. So sometimes happen with me, I write something, and after a week I look at it and I say, this is rubbish. Why I even write this paper? What I'm talking here. So it happens to everybody. So it's going back and rewriting and looking at it. I think that's very important. Also, get a second opinion. So ask somebody else's to read to understand it. Don't try to use a big words as well. This happens particularly for those people who are native speakers that try to use a big word when they're explaining simple concept. So don't try to that. Write a simple language. Use a simple language to tell critically, but critically evaluate. So don't list it. Listing is a big issue. So you say, Smith said, Anderson say that you write a lot of them, but so what? So they need to interconnect somehow later on together. So these are the tips, but and it depends on the people. Some people, they are naturally can write. Some people, they need training.
I believe we have a question
Thanks.
from Mustafa Sasan, Professor Mustafa Sasan.
Good evening, Hocam, Cem Hocam. Good evening, Professor Taheri. Thank you so much for sharing with us a hub knowledge on writing down the articles. Hi from World Peace University in Cyprus. We already attended with one of my PhD students. His name is Gade from Liberia. Yeah, it's very important to we have a lot of tips for understanding how to publicize your article. But before that, you mentioned about the methodology, like either qualitative or quantitative, but there is also another types of methodology. We can call it as triangulation methodology. Mm-hmm. So how do you evaluate for accepting the articles, which includes the triangulation methodology?
So that I mentioned briefly when I talked about the mixed method.
I'm sorry for my missing that.
No. So it's here. So triangulation normally comes with a mixed method.
Mixed methodology.
Yes.
Yeah.
So mainly what comes with a mixed method. So this paper is gonna be out soon, and we explain a little bit of these when we comes with the triangulation. I had this. Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So the problem with triangulation, not problem. Can you give me an example? What is the issue at the moment with your triangulation in your research? Maybe I could help in that way. Is easier.
The reason that I asked this question is about we cannot make differences by using any types of methodology in our article, you know. Especially from the epistemological and ontological part, are going to allow us to make difference of our article to get acceptance from any journal. That's why the methodology, I believe that the methodology limits the rate of acceptance apart from the theoretical part. That's why whether or not we can make a difference, if it is possible, by using the different types of methodology. Of course, our theoretical background will direct us what types of methodology we need to use in any scientific papers. And what types of philosophical debate. I do not mean by limiting my idea within the theoretical part, but also the empirical part, also very important to understand the article. So do you believe that we can have a chance to make a difference aspect of gaining the articles to get acceptance from any journal?
Yes, I publish quite a lot on using mixed method approaches.
So that's the reason that I'm asking these questions, to make an expand explanation to the participants in this seminar, please.
So first of all, you say the philosophical views. So there are philosophical views. So for example, I use pragmatic approach. And I used to do lots of critical realism approach. So if you go with the epistemological, ontological view, so you need to have a clear idea which kind of epistemology and ontology you're going to use. And if you want to use a mixed method, you need to be adaptive view as well. So it needs to be there clearly say is subjective, subjectivity and objectivity is going to mix here. So we need to be clearly say that from the beginning. So the reader knows when you read this, so ontology is important, epistemology is important, and which kind of philosophy you take it. So if you are a pragmatic guy, it's going to be different than when you do the critical realism person. So that's one way of looking at it. Second one is, and I sometimes do, I teach qualitative and quantitative. I do research on that. Particularly now in the States, I'm teaching mixed method class. And a mixed method class, one thing I like to mention is the first question I ask my student is, what is your research question? If your research question can be answered by only qualitative or only quantitative, what is the reason for